So today I have an amazing guest and author on the podcast, Richard Leto. He is the author of My Italian American Roots, and we're excited to have you on, Richard. Thanks for coming.
I appreciate your time, Stephanie. Definitely going to enjoy this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Your book was so enjoyable. I really enjoyed reading it.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we'll get into all of that for the listeners. So,
Sure. Yeah, a little bit about me. Currently I live in Columbus, Ohio with my wife, Susan. However, my personal history is I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and I'd like to say in a specific area, neighborhood, definitely the Italian American enclave of South Philadelphia. And that's where I was born and raised with my sister, my grandparents, etc. Uh, Philadelphia history is important to me, not only because it's the birthplace of our nation, but it's where my Italian immigrant relatives settled and where I was born and raised along with my parents. And I try and take three things that I take away from my old neighborhood. One, I was baptized at the very historic St. Mary Magdalene de Pazzi Parish, which was the first Italian national parish in all of the US,
mm,
1852, well before Italy was unified. But New York doesn't have us beat. There's a historical marker there. My grandparents worshiped there. I was baptized there. My parents were married there. Secondly, that I'd like to say about Philadelphia is that I was born and raised in the nation's first hospital. You can Google it, Pennsylvania Hospital, founded by Ben Franklin and a doctor. And the third part is just being raised in a Little Italy enclave where my relatives settled. So, that's sort of my background. Once again, I do live in Columbus, and that's pretty much it.
Billy, it's a huge part of your identity and your family's identity. Even reading the book, I picked up on that Philadelphia is like a character almost, not just a setting for you.
I agree. It's my personal family legacy, but with hundreds of other families that made the trek. When you look at the statistics, maybe the largest concentration was definitely New York. Philly and Chicago are definitely right in second place with the largest immigration of Italian immigrants. So we get lost in the shadows of New York, and Chicago being so far maybe Midwest, but we were right there. Our my little Italy section had all the regions: Calabria, Sicily, Puglia, Abruzzo, and it was that culture mix right there.
Yeah, it's huge. So going back to the church, I just have a quick question. Is that church still there?
Good question. It sure is. And I've been
Mm,
there when I get back to Philadelphia. They have one mass on a Sunday, but it's technically closed, let's
okay.
say, except for a Sunday mass. It's a precious, it's a museum piece. Thankfully it
Sure.
hasn't been knocked down, let's say, but
Oh
yes.
yeah, I'm so glad to
All
hear
right.
that. Especially being the first Italian, that's huge. That's a huge piece of our culture. I never
Indeed.
knew that until I met and talked to you. So,
Indeed.
yeah, that's really cool. So, where did your family come from in Italy?
So both sides, meaning if you looked at my paternal and maternal side, all my grandparents were Italian immigrants during which we call the Great Arrival, 1880 to 1924. On my paternal side, my grandparents Francesco Leto and Caterina Tropiano came from Calabria, and specifically the town of Santa Caterina del Ionio, which is definitely down there in the boot, pretty far
Mhm.
down. Uh, they came in 1910, which is interesting about my grandparents on my paternal side. They didn't come through Ellis Island. They actually came through the port of Philadelphia, which was also a big immigration hub besides Ellis Island, besides Boston, besides Baltimore, New Orleans. So Philadelphia, still, you can go to where the river is, the Delaware, and you can see this old immigration station. And that's where they came into the States.
Oh, that's
They
neat.
were, they were both married in Italy, in Calabria. They had my one aunt, Aunt Mary, as an infant. She made the trek. She was born in Italy. So that's on my paternal side. And my maternal side is also Italian immigrants between 1880, 1924. My grandparents were from Puglia, Agnello Lucera, and my grandmother was Elisa Basili. And the province of Foggia, specifically their town is Comune di Biccheri. My grandfather definitely came in 1902. They weren't married in Italy. My grandmother came in 1910, Philadelphia, and then they got married in Philadelphia. And I actually have that record of the church certificate that shows that they were married in 1910 in Philadelphia, in the Little Italy enclave, so on and so forth. My paternal grandparents had 7 children, which would include my father. So I had 5 aunts, 2 uncles. On my maternal side, my grandmother had 8 children, 5 boys and 3 girls. And my mother was the youngest. So she was the last one to be born. And that's pretty much their history, which is well documented. I like to connect them to the Great Arrival,
Yeah.
over 100 years ago.
Gosh, and those big families, I'm all those kids. It's just amazing how they made it and went through all of
Through
that.
the Depression, World War One. They
Yeah.
seen their children fight in World War Two. I mean, my story is just like every other story that you might read somewhere else. So, yep.
Well, speaking of your story, why don't we go ahead and dive on in to talking about your book? And I'll get a better picture of this up for our readers, because
Sure,
it's kind
sure.
of coming in fuzzy a little bit. But my Italian American roots. Let's go ahead and give our listeners a little bit
Yeah,
of an
so
overview.
the cover picture is my paternal side. My grandfather's the one that's standing stoic. My grandmother's the one sitting. My dad is in the picture too. So once again, all 7 children are there. Um, the book has a background, let's say. So there's a backstory to the book, and it all starts with this box that was handed down 3 generations, meaning it was a box, a cardboard box. However, if you read the book like you did, I call it the time capsule because it was in our
Mhm.
basement. It went from my grandmother's house. When she passes, it's handed down to my mother. She keeps it in the basement. My mother passes, and then the box resides in my sister's house for over 60 years to 100 years, however you want to timeline it. Um, every now and then, me and my sister used to look at the stuff in the box and say, well, what are we going to do with this stuff? And we would just close the box up and put it back into the basement and never bothered with it, so to speak. But it was truly a time capsule because it captured records, photos that we had never seen, our extended family, cousins had never seen. So we started to put this stuff together in some respect. I mean, and doing it was sort of like a true labor of love, not for recognition, not for reward, because it wasn't a memoir that I wanted to do. It wasn't a biography of, it was just pieces. And that's what I called it on the cover. There were pieces in this box that meant so much to me personally, obviously, and to my sister. And I was able to, I think, capture that within this first time as an author to capture that little bit of story of me. So, like I said, it's a time capsule. To me, it's basically what you do with the Italian American stories. They're undiscovered, they're untold, they're packed away somewhere. Now they're digitized, but whether it's in a newspaper or in a box, there's a story to be told. And I took my time with it. To me, some of those pieces could be hanging in a museum.
Mhm.
That one record is the original certificate of naturalization from 1915. It's over 100 years old. If you were to touch it like I touch it, it's like parchment paper. It's pristine condition. So once again, it could be hanging up on a wall in a museum. And it tells the story of my grandfather becoming a U.S. naturalized citizen, you know.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I loved about the book is the documents and the pictures that are in there. Because you could write and tell me about them all day long, but to actually see them, and you had some cool stuff in there. What was it? The Italian family like burial, the funeral, like that was so cool. I've never like that was a whole business, and you had the receipt for it.
I mean, I'm getting goosebumps as we, yes, specifically. Can you imagine? Because then I did, it was like $500 the cost. And I put it in today's terms. I did a calculation. It's a couple thousand. But yeah, that funeral parlor, which, a lot of Italian American was right in the heart of Little Italy. And here it is documenting the cost of the funeral for my grandfather that my grandmother had to pay for.
Yeah.
So I agree wholeheartedly. That's like another. Wow. I'm glad it didn't make it to the trash pile, as I said in my book, quite frankly.
Well, and
So
it's something that you could see, you know, after a few years, somebody going, well, we don't really need this. This was 15 years ago or whatever, because now it's so timeless. It's timeless for Italian American historians, but even just historians in general, because it can, you know, talk like the cost and the process and stuff. And I'll post that picture up for our listeners to see.
I agree. It's so tangible. Like I said, you start with the title of the company. It's the Italian Burial Company. I mean, how much more Italian could you get? The owner is like a Peter Giacovini. I mean, I went into the details. I looked at the address. That's like in the heart of the Little Italy section, bustling with the butcher shop, the grocery store, the chicken store, the pastry shop, right there. Here it is. And it was saved. That's the other thing. That's what
Yeah.
I think. Not only do I have it, but it was saved. Like, and that, you beg the question, you're like, why?
Yeah.
But
Thank
thankfully,
goodness.
but thankfully,
Now, would you say, because like to me, finding a box of family memorabilia like that, oh, dream come true. Like I couldn't imagine. But would you say that kind of drove like each document, each picture kind of drove the narrative arc of your story a little bit? Um,
absolutely, absolutely. I
okay.
mean, because well, at first it was overwhelming because it's like, where do I start? Where am I going to end? So I
Yeah.
sort of had to put a frame around all of this, quite frankly, and talking it over with my sister, and we figured we had to parcel it out. We had to whittle it down. It was that simple because otherwise, uh, some pieces it was like a puzzle. I wanted the pieces to fit together, quite frankly,
Yes.
and I think I did it. So there's other things that in hindsight, sometimes I like, well, I should have put this in there. But like I said, I had to put boundaries. I had to lay
Sure.
out this puzzle. Basically, that's what I was doing. I was building a puzzle, but I had to take these little pieces and make sure that they fitted and tell the complete story in some respect. So that was a challenge to do that, to whittle them down, I would call that.
And I think you did a great job, you know, because this it's my background's fuzzy, but you know, there's documents and pictures, and it's kind of cool how it just drove your family story, and how you just tied those documents in there. It was really cool.
Yeah, thanks for picking that up. I agree, and that's helpful to know. I mean, thankful to know. Yes.
Yeah. So going into your research methods, in the book you talk about how you started researching kind of in the 1980s, where you had to go to a physical place, you had to dig through those papers, those archives. But then I thought it was interesting because towards the later on in the end of the book, you talk about how you turned to social media, which in a way is its own research thing, but totally different.
I could still remember coming out of my house, getting on the bus. I went to the National Archives in Center City, Philadelphia. You walk in there, it's a cold place, meaning the staff's just there, not so anxious to help you. You know, I've got a name, I've got a date, fill out this form. They take it back into a room. They come out with this index card that's on a microfiche. I go to this reader and I see where their other information's relevant, give it back to the staff, and they say, well, now if you want that record, you got to send away for it, and there's like a fee. Fill out this form, send it away to the National Archives in DC, and then
Jeez
a couple
Louise.
days later I get this manifest, I get this declaration of intention, and so on and so forth regarding their naturalization records. So once again, 45 years ago. Then I go to the city hall in Philadelphia. I said, let me see if I can get some birth, death records. That was another chore. Your staff filled out this form, give it to them. 10 cents a copy, maybe, right? How many copies do you want, right? Give me 3 copies, right? Then I go to the Free Library of Philadelphia. I wanted to look at old newspapers. So once again, fill out some information, hand it over to the clerk or the staff, and they go back there and they give me this reel, this film, I don't know, 8 millimeters or whatever it is. And then there's this machine. I go into this machine and and I scroll until I get to this date. I was looking for some death notices, and sure enough, I hit jackpot. The interesting thing, whatever I collected at that point in time, I threw it in a folder, Stephanie, and I can tell you that folder laid dormant for quite some time.
Hmm.
Life got in the way, let's say. So that
Sure.
folder had all of this information, and I would say 30 years ago, 25 years ago is when I opened it. And then with the proliferation of digitized records, I was able to start even to build further along with my cousin to do that. And like you alluded to, social media back then, I played a part because then I was finding websites with these towns and I started to load pictures of my family. I've got connections in Australia, Canada now, all related to my town. Maybe they knew where my grandparents lived in those towns, so on and so forth. So, but I'm pretty versed now in using all the social media, all the databases available to do genealogy, whether it's the World War II records, even the World War I records, city directories that are out there, church records, so on and so forth. So, I just love genealogy research, and
Oh
that's a
yeah,
big
me
part of
too.
what I do.
And that's what's nice. There's value in each. Of course, there's value in the archives and all of that. But we are really blessed, like, for as all the faults of technology can have, for genealogists, we're living in a great age because we can get on our computer and research those archives now. But we can also reach out to social media and find relatives that we never knew existed. And they can tell us a story or provide us a picture that archive database library will probably never, well, will never be able to give us. And so it's so nice to have those two worlds come together thanks to technology is, the downfall of it for sure, but there's some good.
Well said. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and that's helped immensely. Yes, yes.
It is. It's great. So going back to the box. Now, did you always know that that box existed, or did you just come across it, your time capsule one day?
So obviously not my grand. I mean, I was me and my sister were born in the house of my grandmother in the Little Italy section. So when she passes back in '63, obviously my mother acquires the box, and not and then like I said, not until the '80s when I'm sort of a teenager, where we like, hey, there's this box in the basement. What is this, Mom? Oh, it's got pictures and family records. Okay, thanks. You know,
Move on. Yeah.
yeah, we sort of moved on.
How did it feel when you found it? Like when you finally dug through it? Because I would lose my
So
mind.
it's yeah, when you obviously as you get older, now it when you open it, it has more meaning. Like I said, teenage years, growing up, life gets in the way. You don't, now when you get older, let's face it, you reminisce and the nostalgia that 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 can warm your heart. And you see that in other people's stories that write their memoirs, good, sad stories. Um, so you look at the material and you say, geez, I'm thankful that it's here.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm going to cherish it. I'm going to do everything to safeguard it now. And me and my sister have done such. So we're thankful because, we've shared that with other extended family members, cousins, aunts and uncles that passed. And they're like, wow, we never knew that, so on and so
Yeah.
forth. And it's neat to hear that from them. And they're heartwarmed too about that.
I can only imagine the chills that you must have felt going through some of that stuff and seeing, because pictures are so amazing. And now you've been able to document a good majority of those and put them in your book for the world to read.
Yeah, there's two, I call them artifacts, and that's what an artifact is. It's an original piece, handwritten by my grandfather in Italian language, cursive, but it delineates, his beginnings,
Mm,
when he came to America, the date, right? When he
hmm.
became a citizen, when he got married, list all his children. I mean, once again, it's a museum piece to me to know that piece of paper has survived in that plastic bag, has been handed down. Once again, that could be in a showcase in a museum, and the
For sure.
backstory. When you're personally connected to it, yeah, it's heartwarming. It's a
Yeah.
cherished. I called it the family jewels. It was it was the family jewels in some respect, you know.
Absolutely.
It wasn't real property, it wasn't money. I mean, what we inherited, that's what we did. We inherited family legacy, a story.
Which is priceless. It
Thank you.
truly is. Yeah.
Took the words that I meant. Yes, yes.
When I saw the read that part where your grandfather listed like the dates of birth of his children, I just kind of thought he was a genealogist at heart in a way, you know, like he was recorded like because he knew that that had to have been something that his future generations would see and want. I thought that was really cool.
I mean, you're right. You can go down and why did he do it? I'm glad that he did it. But like you
Yeah.
said, to record and maybe hand that down, and wow, we
Yep.
owe him homage. I mean, we honor that, you know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's always something to see your relatives' hand. I love looking at the handwriting just to see their way that they wrote. Like that was their moment that they put something down on paper, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so we've already talked about Philadelphia a little bit, but yeah, that's another part of your book that I really enjoyed reading because through your writing I could tell how much Philadelphia meant to you and your family because like you said your family came and settled there and the buildings and the appreciation it just like I said it was more than a setting, it's like almost a character.
Well, it's funny. Can I read a quote that sort of ties in what you just said? So let me read it.
Absolutely.
It says, all my Italian immigrant grandparents came to Philadelphia, never went back to Italy, and they died in Philadelphia. My deceased parents were the children of these Italian immigrants. They were born and raised in Philadelphia, the Italian enclave. They too never moved away from Philadelphia, and they also died in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is where my Italian American roots coalesce. They all come together. They summarize. So to me, Philadelphia is the bond that connects my grandparents, my parents, and me to the Italian American experience.
Mm,
I mean,
it's
and
beautiful.
there's so much to unpack in there. I mean, if you wanted to read between the lines, like I said, the neighborhood, the extended family, everything that goes in with this umbrella of Italian American experience, the rituals, the traditions, so on and so forth. It's all in between those words. And
Absolutely.
Philadelphia is that is that glue, you know.
Yeah. And then
But
there's such a
everybody has a
community.
hometown and they connect to, we've talked offline about yours. It's here, right? It's really there. And
Yeah.
even though I've moved away, it's still there. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's Denver for me. You know, I mean, I grew up the little Italy was not really around, and I did not grow up in Denver, but my mother grew up in Denver, and that's where her Italian family, you know, all of our Italian relatives went to.
Wonderful.
And so for me, I completely understand it, and I'm a big fan of buildings and the meaning that they have. So it's pretty cool. Now, your did you get the in your book you talked about how you got a chance to go back to the villages in Italy?
Yeah. So I'll try and keep it short. So actually, my one cousin really started a couple years ago to connect because he went there and found distant living relatives, distant second cousins, so on and so forth, that carried a surname, the last name of Lucera. And about 3 years ago, he said to me, he said, "Hey, you want to come?" I said, "Sure." Because he says, "I just wrote a book." And I said, "Well, what's your book about?" He says, "Well, through my research, I found out that hundreds of people from our town resided in Philadelphia." And his book is amazing because it delineates these families, these connections, hundreds that were able, and we actually have a map that shows the plots of where they all resided across Philadelphia. It's just amazing. So they made their own paese, and he calls it the New Beacony. So our town is Beacony, but he calls it the New Beacony. So I went back in 2022 was my first time. I went in 2023. I went in 2024, and guess where I'm going next week?
You're going
Back to
back.
Beacony. Yeah, so it's going to
Nice.
be 4 consecutive years uh, to, to just walk and to know where their house is. I mean, once again, heartwarming beyond. There's a draw, but everybody knows that's been back to their ancestral town. So, and to have distant family members that embrace you is just totally heartwarming. I mean, one of my
Mm.
cousins has an olive oil company, so we make a stop there. We get some olive oil. We go and see the fields where the olives are grown. We go to the cemetery and see the names of our ancestors that are buried there. And then
Mm.
obviously dinners and the festivals that we take in are definitely cherished. I just wish others were around, like my parents that never went,
Mm.
and I guess I'm the one that's doing that now. So I look forward to that. It's heartwarming. But I've only been to Puglia. I haven't made it to Calabria yet.
Okay. And is that your background? Is that your
Yeah, so,
family?
so maternal side is Puglia, and
Okay.
my paternal side is Calabria.
Okay. Very cool. Nice. Oh, so on your book, is that's the first book that you wrote, right?
Yes, Stephanie, yes.
All right. What would you say your pros and cons are? The pros and cons of writing a first book.
So a couple things. Yeah, obviously, I went with a self-published Amazon. I used Amazon to Kindle Direct Publishing. So their website is full with information, full with information. I mean, it'll walk you through the beginning, the middle to the end. The only
Nice.
thing is, it's all up to you. They don't hold your hand through that. Like a publisher might do all the editing, do the marketing, the distribution, and you might connect with somebody and have that person walk you through, have a phone call with them, so on and so forth. Amazon, I didn't talk to anybody, nobody.
Gotcha.
Just follow what they tell you from beginning to end. They sort of parcel it out too. But the end state is where you upload your manuscript, you upload the cover, you keep your fingers crossed. I think they have some AI that'll look through that, and then it'll come back and say maybe it's not going to fit, so on and so
Mm.
forth. I waited for an email and it says you're ready to publish.
Wow.
So using them, the con is it was on me, meaning I had to get my own editor, I had to get my own graphic designer. Um, Good and bad with that. It was challenging to look at files that I had to accept the edits that were being made or make changes. The files were large, so I had to use a Dropbox feature
Oh,
to
geez.
send these photos. And then I had to change resolution because, all of that's critical in the printing process. So, um, but the folks that I had working, made sure that my margins were good. I had a nice header and footer, so on and so forth. The other thing is basically Amazon is the distributor, meaning I can't go elsewhere and have that book sold on any other bookshelf.
Oh,
So it's only
okay. I didn't
available.
know
Yeah,
that.
so they sort of own the rights to do all of that. But once again,
Okay.
it's hands off because if people want to purchase it, I just tell them to go to Amazon, right?
That's
Yeah,
true. So your book wouldn't, they couldn't find it in Barnes and Nobles.
that's correct,
Okay.
Stephanie.
Okay.
Now, there's some
Interesting. I didn't
fine
know that.
print legalese when you go through this, say we own all the rights to it, so on and so. However, I can purchase books myself as an author, and if I wanted to sign some books at a presentation. So, um, the other thing that Amazon does free is they give you what's called the International Standard Book Number. It's called the ISBN number.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you purchase that, it's like $100. So they give
Okay.
it to you free. And that's really like a serial number that's cataloged, so on and so forth. You got to write a description. Besides the manuscript, the book, you have to write a description that appears on the Amazon website. So I did that. And then what they do is they cut pieces, they sample the pieces of the book and they throw that on the website so people can open the cover and go into a few pages to read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a process. Yeah.
I called it a project, but you want to call it, yeah, it's a project. There's a draft here that needs to
Yeah.
be cleaned up. You got to go to the typesetter, right? They're going to do their thing, so on and so forth. They're going to hand it off to me. I got to go into the Amazon site, but it is a project. And how you manage your files, version one, version two, which version did I just look at? So file management, the key, some other tips that I would give is like, make sure you keep your files in order, those photos. I
Mm.
mean, and I did that. I was kind of organized. I think the other thing you need to be is organized. I mean, I had a whole file just with the photos numbered, figured 1 1, figure 1 2, and then
Mm.
I had the caption right next to it. So when I
Nice.
handed that off, to my typesetter, it was, cut and paste, so to speak. So
Yeah.
organizational file management, project process. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Any other tips or resources you could offer for somebody who's maybe wanting to write a book about their Italian American experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's got a story that needs to be told, and once again, at first frame it, it's a puzzle, and then get all these little pieces that could, maybe tell a story. It doesn't have to be linear, you can go up and down,
Hmm.
over and out. Um, be organized about that, and start journaling your whatever you do from a genealogy. Start journaling that. I've actually helped a lot of people, some younger gentlemen that I'm in contact with, and they've taken off. They couldn't thank me enough for letting them know how to, start journal your stuff,
Yeah.
document your stuff, because at someday this stuff will just be easy to retrieve and use however you may feel to use it, in a PowerPoint, or put it in a put it in a binder before you print something, so on and so forth. Yeah. Um, but you got to have a purpose. I think you got to have your end state up front. Up front, you got to know, what do you want to accomplish, like a goal. You need a goal up front, right? And
Sure.
then try to do everything to get you to that goal. Sometimes you'll go astray, which is normal in any project. Sometimes the project opens up even further, right? Or there's a
Yeah.
fork in the road. Maybe you got to take both sides of the road, but you'll come together maybe at some point. So um, yeah, and it was a journey in itself to do that. Some days when I was writing my manuscript, I'd be there at the computer for like an hour and got two sentences out, right?
Yeah.
Another night, I'd be at the computer and I'd just be typing away, right?
Yep.
Getting much out. Um, but that's all part of it. And then I think the last thing I did do is, I'll be honest with you, Stephanie, I looked at YouTube videos, how to be a successful author. People are giving their tips. So I would encourage people to look at YouTube how-to videos out there, how to self-publish. And there's the pros and the cons with Amazon, so on and so forth.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, YouTube taught me how to podcast. I had no experience. I don't understand audio, video. So take advantage of it for sure. Even AI. I mean, having
Indeed.
plugging something into AI and saying, "Can you check my
Indeed.
grammar on this? Help me reword this." Or give me an idea. It's definitely take advantage of it because
Yeah.
it's there and it's not going anywhere. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Well, with us being the Italian American Stories podcast, do you have a family story or memory that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, let me give you a little bit of background. So when you look at my family, on my maternal side. So my one grandfather, Agnello, he dies in 1930, which is over 100 years ago. And at that point, obviously, my grandmother's a widow raising 8 children during the Depression, so on and so forth. And my mom was 2 years old when her dad passed, so she really never knew her father. I was fortunate enough to know my grandmother, though, because I was not born in the house, but in my early years, me and my sister lived with my grandmother,
Mm.
and she was a single parent, basically raising these children during that time frame. Um, know a lot about her, was, up to, I don't know, 7 years old, can remember a lot in her house, so to speak. And when you look at pictures that are taken with her, you can sort of reminisce. And maybe creativity takes away. You think you remember something, but you really, you don't kind of remember.
Yeah.
Um, but the other interesting thing about my grandparents, they lived about 4 city blocks away in the Little Italy section. And if you looked at the map in my book, when from Italy, they lived like 300 miles away. And
Mm.
it's just weird how it all happened. So the real backstory about my family, what I remember, because my other grandmother, my Calabrian girl, she lived until 1969, and I was 10 years old. So I every Sunday, here's the story I'll share. Every Sunday, I'll never forget. My dad would take me and my sister to go visit her. It was religious. It had to be done. And she never spoke English, Italian all the way. But as soon as you got in the house, she hugged you, never wanted to let you go. But as
Oh.
soon as she had my hand, she would put $1 in it. And I can tell you, Stephanie, that just never goes away. That's a
Oh,
story that I can't forget. And obviously, she couldn't wait until we got there, and she knew that she was going to give us $1. Me and my sister.
that's
That was touching, definitely.
that's pretty cool. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that story with us. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. So, besides going to Italy next week, do you have any other projects that you're working on?
So I'll tell you, I keep myself active. It's quite frankly, I belong to a bunch of Italian American social clubs here in Columbus, and it's definitely rewarding to see things that we do that keeps our heritage going, whether it's our bocce tournaments, making pesto. We had a pesto competition, wine tasting, making lemon jello, so on and so forth. But recently, I became what's called an ambassador to We the Italians. It's a major online publication where I do write stories for different Italian American newspapers, one being We the Italians, and some other publications. So I try and here in Columbus tell a little bit of a story, whether it's my genealogy story or something that happens on my visit back to the ancestral village. So I like doing that, and I'm intrigued by everybody else's story because back at my social club, I always want to know where's your family from, and before you know it, it's like, wait a minute, my town's about 10 miles from your town. You got to be kidding me, and it becomes
Yeah,
this small world. So
for
that sort of
sure.
motivates me. It excites me, you know, here in Columbus because there's a large Italian American community with a lot of history, and I gravitate to that. And I'm glad to be part of the ambassadors that are all throughout the states and are able to tell the stories wherever they may be. Denver, Baltimore, St. Louis, and all those little enclaves that fortunately still exist, maybe in a smaller capacity.
Sure. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. I totally feel you on hearing everybody's story. That's
Yeah.
my whole world, obviously, with this podcast. So, well, where can we talked about your book. They can buy your book at Amazon. I'll post a link in the show notes. But where can the listeners find you?
So back to the Amazon, another thing about Amazon. So when I first published, I only published the paperback. So I used to get these emails from Amazon. It says, well, now you should make it an e-Kindle book, right? So I dug in, how do you do that, Amazon, right?
Mm.
And they have a software package, meaning it was easy, meaning I took that manuscript, it was a PDF file, threw it in there, made some changes, and I was able to also make it an e version. So
Oh,
just to let
great.
people know, it's also an e. So that was helpful because that was on me. They gave me the software, and sure, people want to read it, on their tablet or phone. So the e version is out there. So it's funny, where people can find me. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, but a little backstory with my social media, Facebook and Instagram. Um, I don't know, when I first got on Instagram, people are like, "You got to get on Instagram." I says, "No, I don't really want to." I said, "I don't want to make friends." I think I was unsocial. People, well, you're unsocial. It's a social media platform. So I said, okay, I'll get on, but I'm not going to use my real name. I'm going to have an alias. And I do. So my alias, if you want to find me, and I feel, please find me. It's Philly Rich. Uh, talk about my Philadelphia roots. There it is.
That's right there.
I mean, not only did I tell you a little bit of history about Philadelphia, but I grew up where Rocky ran. Rocky, lived part of his life, Sylvester Stallone, in Philadelphia, and famously in his one movie is where he runs through the Italian market, which was where I was born and raised, close to where my grandparents raised. So um, Philly rich, and now I have, 900 friends that I never thought I'd have. But thankfully, because some of those friends are connections back to my roots, like
Mm.
I said, those towns that these people that moved to Australia, Canada, or back in Italy that I talk to. And I use a translator to Google Translate, and I speak to these people, and it's been phenomenal. And then on Instagram, I think South underscore rich
Okay.
Philly. So I use
Perfect.
those platforms to showcase when I make my trips and other events that might be here, the Columbus Italian Festival. I love being a part of that. festival, and that's pretty much my social media presence.
Perfect. Well, I'll post all of that in our show notes so that way people can
Thank
follow
you.
you, find your book or the ebook. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Well, Philly Rich, aka Richard Leto, this was great. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your story and your book with us.
Yeah, I mean, Stephanie, it's enjoyable because I think what we talked about is no different from what you do in the title of your podcast, the Italian American Stories Podcast, Untold Stories in Newspapers. I mean, it's no different. They're there, they're somewhere. You're uncovering them, just like I uncovered a story out of this box, so to speak. But you're
Absolutely.
doing it in the digital age, and I'm excited for you because, and then to give us the platform to tell us our story is heartwarming. So thank you for doing that. Bravo.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yep, it's a labor of love for sure. Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All
Oh,
right, ciao, bye bye.
bye. Have a great trip in
Thanks, Stephanie.
Italy.
Thank you.